everybody, Jessica Henry Gray here, and I'm excited to be back with you today. Today I'm demonstrating painting this springtime river back here. Now this did take me pretty much, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, a long time, so a lot of it's going to be fast forwarded. So I do appreciate your likes and subscribes, so let's get going.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. My channel primarily focuses on plein air painting. With over 30 years teaching experience, I find that plein air painting is so enjoyable, and I love the adventure and travel and just getting out into nature that plein air painting allows. I focus on painting in a manner that teaches you the basics of plein air painting with efficiency, composition, and basically getting out and having a good time. Enjoy my videos and let's get out there and paint something beautiful.
Today I am at this beautiful park, and there's a lovely creek down here. So I'm gonna find somewhere to paint. Unfortunately, there's a lot of traffic, and I wish I could find somewhere that doesn't have all that car noise in the background. I might walk around a little bit, but I'm gonna find a really beautiful place. The reason I chose this location is because it reminded me of a Peter Mork Munstead painting. So today, I'm working on a massive, to me it's massive, 16 by 20. So I wanted to do that today. I've got the whole day. It's beautiful weather. I'm excited to be out. And I think that this direction, the lighting should be somewhat the same throughout the course of the day. So I'm gonna see what I can do and find somewhere to set up. All right. I think I'm gonna go down there. I like that area. I love how the land just has these neat formations here, but I do think I'm gonna find what I'm looking for down that way. So I'm liking that the further away I get from the road, go figure, it's a little quieter. But you can see all around me here. It's just a lovely place, and it really caught my eye. A really great tool to helping you decide what it is you want to paint when you get to a location is to look through your phone. Through your phone, you can sort of see this composition as it's laid out. Like, I like these two logs, and brush and stuff here, kind of directing the viewer in that way. I like those branches up there curving around. I think that's pretty neat. I'm not crazy about that in there. So you keep looking around, keep thinking. It's always best too to leave your stuff in the car before deciding on a spot. I really like this view from on top of the bridge, looking out that way. Look at these beautiful trees. Well, I found my spot. I'm actually kind of under the bridge. And I know I wanted to get away from the cars and the airplanes and that guy's cooler. It's kind of abandoned there. But I love this view. I walked over onto the other side over there, and it just didn't have the interest that looking at this side of the river has. So I'm staying over here, and I may have to do a voiceover because I don't know that I can talk over all those cars and airplanes and such. So there's our view. Okay, so it took me about an hour, but I am finally set up and ready to start painting. Now my format here is a little bit different today than what I normally use. This is my James Coulter easel. So this is just the attachment here, and then there is a palette down below, but I find it too low and you can't see it when I make videos, and the value down there is different than the value up here. So I like to use a hand palette when I'm using a larger canvas to paint on because of the formatting. So for colors today, I have out titanium white, cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow medium, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, and alizarin permanent. So just my standard palette today. A little bit of Galkid gel and my odorless mineral spirits down below. I'm establishing the biggest lines in here first to see if this is the overall massing that I like. This is middle tone. Across the way here, there's the darker values. In the bank, the sky is the lightest light. So I like that design, but I'm going to keep fishing. I'm going to see what I can find in a different format. So I'm going to start out, that was starting out with the boundary, and then I drew within it. I'm going to start out with within it and see what I come up with for my boundaries to see if that's really how I like it. Okay, so I like this a little bit better because I wanted to see more of the tops of the trees up in here and a little bit more of this foreground in here, because I really like the way that the grass and the rocks come, you can kind of see it behind me, sort of come down towards me, leading the viewer back in this way. So I'm going to do this one, and again, these spring greens up here just are so nice in keeping the viewer into this focal area right here, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. Okay, so a thumbnail sketch shouldn't take you more than a couple minutes, and it doesn't have to be elaborate either. You have to know what you're doing with your 3 values: light, medium, and dark. Okay, so, and then your overall composition. However you divide these, it has to be, say, 10%, 60%, and 30%. And however you shuffle these around, you go here, or here, or here, or here, whatever you do, that's a really nice basic compositional ratio for your light, medium, and darks. And that helps you in establishing your overall shapes too. Okay, we're ready to jump in. Most of the time I like to start a painting with a toned canvas, and in this case I started with a little bit of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, some blue, and I blocked it in different areas. You can see on there where I'm sort of rubbing off the tone now. I tone the canvas that way so that in case some of the canvas shows through, that the color underneath helps affect what I'm doing. Now, holding my brush very loosely, I am gently drawing in the composition as I had laid it out in my thumbnail sketch, utilizing some of the thought process that I had worked through in the couple different sketches that I came up with, knowing that there were those aspects that were really important to me that I wanted to make sure that I got into the painting. And that's one of the ways that a thumbnail sketch can help you with efficiency. All of that thinking work I already did ahead of time. And so that really streamlined this process right here. I'm paying extra attention to the major elements in this composition that have a lot of character, not just the dividing lines and the value, but those significant trees that are going to help with the overall design and composition. Now I put a little bit of thinner on my brush, and I'm using a paper towel to wipe out the passages where I want a little bit lighter value. It's not an exact science, but it gives me sort of a guidepost for my 3 major values. So you can see it shouldn't take very long to establish your light, medium, and dark, just like on a thumbnail sketch. And so these are sort of my anchor points. Yeah, that's not as light as it's going to be in the end product, but it gives me sort of a guidepost. I'm keeping the paint fairly thin.
And when I say thin, I don't mean I'm thinning it down with odorless mineral spirits. I'm using a little bit of my medium in the sky to keep it a little thinner. You don't want to use your odorless mineral spirits as a painting medium. It is only in the context of painting for the purpose of toning a canvas and then lightly laying in the composition. As a medium, it will mix with the paint, the binding agent of the oil paint, and denature it so that it doesn't adhere over time. It sort of powders off. So you don't want to use the odorless mineral spirits as a painting medium. Now you can see from my photo reference off to the side that the sky is very blue. That was about 4 hours after I had started this painting. It took about 4 hours to do this painting, so it was late morning when I had arrived and set up at my location. So the sky had a lighter, softer, almost hazy morning color to it still. So that's why the reference is a little bit different than what I'm actually doing. I'm taking a little bit of burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and some white to make a nice gray with a little bit of yellow ochre to sort of warm it up, to put in that mud and the dirt. Okay. All right, now to get up where the trees meet the sky. Take some grays with little burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and blue with some white in there. I'll just take what I've got already. So I'm going to take some cadmium yellow into the white and the blue to make sort of that soft springy green that I see now up along the edge of the trees as they meet the sky. It's mostly a yellow and white, and I kind of work that throughout the top, occasionally adding a little bit more yellow or a little bit more blue just to show the different kinds of trees. That top tree line is very important. That I want to keep the edges very soft, so that's always why I do the sky first, and then I work that soft edge of the trees into the sky color, softening that so it has the appearance of the trees being rounded and that the sky goes up and over the top. So I always put a little bit of cooler tone on the tops of trees to give them the illusion of turning back and away from us. Now, when working on a complicated scene like this forest where there is a lot of information, to get that that look, what you want to do is squint way down at the forest, and I'm just picking up the blocked in colors that are a little more atmospheric in the furthest distance. So I've got the tops of the trees and then a little darker sage, and it turns more gray as the forest gets thicker towards the bottom of the forest floor. So it's more dense back in there because less light's hitting it. So I'm just consciously aware of the light filtering through the trees in a spring green sort of atmosphere. And you can see now I'm starting to put in that deeper shade of green in the distance. And I like to keep some of those values a little more vertical to give the illusion of trees and other things going on back there. It just creates a sense of depth, and it also serves to not be that distracting. By adding 1,000 trees. It's just a simple mass with some texture. So a tiny bit of phthalo green into my cadmium yellow and white will give a really nice, very light sort of spring green. But the key word there is a tiny bit of phthalo green. It can really go crazy on you really fast. So just if I were to use it as a recipe, I would say a pinch of phthalo green to 1 cup of cad yellow and white. So like that's how tiny. And that was a little bit of blue that I added so that as my grassy hill there goes further off in the distance, it cools down and becomes, more atmospheric and hazy as it goes off. As I come up to the grass in the foreground, you saw that I grabbed a little bit more, maybe 2 pinches of the phthalo green and ultramarine blue into that cad yellow and less of the white. The closer we get, the less white that I would use and the more solid color that, see, white will cool things down and it pushes things further into the background. So the less white up front, the more close it appears. While I had that really rich, beautiful dark green, I decided to put it in other places where I saw it on the canvas, such as up close and the reflections further back down in the water. And that's another way to stay efficient with your time, is to see where else you can put it on the canvas. If you've got it mixed up already, squint down at your scene and see if you can put it anywhere else. Now I'm taking a little bit of burnt sienna and yellow ochre and some ultramarine blue, and I'm placing that where when I squint, I can see some of those really dark, rich, wet passages, the wet sand and the wet mud. But as it slips onto the land where it's drier, that's fallen leaves. And I know that I'm going to be painting trees over the top of that passage of just dried fallen leaves there. Squinting down at it, and I know it's hard to see from the photo reference, but it had sort of a rusty, chalky, dry color on the ground in nature. So I added that here again with a little bit more yellow ochre into the water. Same color, maybe a little bit more burnt sienna and yellow ochre into the water, using sort of that vertical stroke to sort of blend with the green of the reflections. As that color in the water, the burnt sienna, yellow ochre, comes closer to us, I add a little more of the yellow ochre, just a bit more, because the yellow ochre is semi-opaque and it will sort of cloud the water, which is appropriate to the water that I see up close to us. Now the water that is right up close to us has some yellow ochre and some cadmium yellow right into that water mixture. I've grabbed a little bit of blue to make it greenish right up front here where the water is shallow and I can see the rocks in there. That's where that cadmium yellow is going to give a slight illusion of transparency to the water. And this little mixture of white with some blue is for the little bit of reflections in the water. I come back and work on those reflections a little bit later just to enhance them a bit more. I'm establishing a few darks off to the side, and this is the halfway point. I had to stop and take a break here. Coming back, the sunlight had shifted a bit, so I adjusted the camera at a different angle. And I'm feeling content with the background and the trees and just basically the backdrop that all of what I've done so far provides. Now I start to lay in my trees and I think about how they are positioned with each other to create sort of an interesting rhythm of their placement in the forest. As those trees go further back, I can look at them and see that they're very dark also, but I don't want to make them as black as I do the ones up front. So I watch that value digression as they go further back into the painting. This one up front was a white tree and it had some black on it, but I really wanted to focus on the neat branches and the twists and turns and the subtleties of that tree. If I'd had more time or wanted to go back to the location, I probably would have wanted to spend more time on it because I'm just so fascinated by these trees. But anyway, kept it moderately simple. Now I'm coming through with some of the lighter green colors, some of that spring green that I already mixed up with a little white, where the sun had shifted a little bit toward the afternoon. And so I wanted to capture some of that sun as it just touched that hillside in the woods there that I was so drawn to in the first place, with that grassy sort of just hill coming down. So a little bit of the cad yellow, and I used a little of the cad yellow light into that phthalo green mixture. And I will just sort of glaze this in places where I feel like the sunshine is really hitting it brightest. And there are some leaves that were picking up that transparent sunlight through in the distance there. And I didn't want, you have to be very careful not to overdo that. So just a small bit of it, and just to give that effect. I really liked how this tree in the background just peeked above the tree line. So working with those branches, I just did some gentle little smudges in the skyline to create that distant illusion. Now here I have just a mixture of yellow ochre, white, and a little burnt sienna to get some of that dry riverbed back there. And I am laying down just parallel lines of rocks and things as they recede back. There's a little waterfall, a tiny rapids way back there that I'll get to later. So working on this upfront water again, so I wanted some more opacity in the water, so a little yellow ochre, some tiny bit of white, and then further back, the tops of the rocks that are under the water, I used some of that same mixture to indicate there's a shadow under the rock, and then that's the surface of the rock on top. And so I sort of utilize that result, that effect here further up close. I do a slight shadow under the ground, and then I'll do a light color over the top to indicate a rock. So that's what I'm mixing up, some of the cad yellow and yellow ochre, and just laying that down in the water here. But I do like to get sort of the color of the water first, and then I'll add the features, rocks, and then when the rocks are done, I add the surface texture. I'll use nature as a reference for where I want to put rocks in the water, but I will also think about them sort of as music notes and create interesting sort of rhythm, just like I did with the trees, and put the rocks where I feel like artistically they're going to be best placed. So I start again with just the shadow first, and that gives me a sense of where I'm going to go with the composition of the rocks in the water. So I'm placing the lighter color now on the tops of the rocks in the water. It's very subtle, but you can feel that it is connected to the shadow, that they are in fact rocks. And I'm literally making these rocks with 2 brush strokes, a shadow and a lighter color for the top. And it sounds simple, but if you don't get the brush stroke and the values accurate, then they're not going to feel like rocks under the water. So you have to just be careful and observe carefully the color that the value is, and then the softness of the brush stroke. For the distant little waterfall rapid situation back there, I'm keeping the distance, far away in the distance, like little tiny gray dashes indicating that the water goes around the bend back there, small little horizontal lines. Now, some of these rocks up close were peeking above the water, so I added a little bit more white and yellow ochre to the rock, a little bit of yellow ochre, mostly just white, to indicate that it is above. And the white will give the illusion of the rock being dry. So that's how you create that look of it being up above the surface. And then I added a dark water line where the water has darkened the rock. And so I've got a few more that I want to add. And again, it's a little more of the white into that yellow ochre rock mixture. Now these trees off to the left were very important as they were part of the composition in leading and directing the eye and kind of holding the viewer into the painting. And they're going to be best indicated by just some dark lines that have some character to the lines. As I saw them, some of them were lighter in value and some were darker in value. The ones up close to me gave me that strong, darkest dark up close, also creating the illusion of depth to the painting. So having that as an anchor, it really helped to isolate what is near and what is far. Very lightly, as the branches get smaller and smaller, they get lighter and lighter. So I wanted to make sure that those had that feeling of light wrapping around the branches. Now, the sunshine was coming through and just hitting the grass on the other side, here closer to me. And I wanted some lighter green and some lighter gray on the mud, and added a few more rocks into this passage. By adding a few little dark accents into that funny little passage of brushstrokes going this way and that, adding the darks going this way and that will also create the illusion of a pile of gravelly rocks right on the bank. And so that's a nice way to create that effect. So I take a little bit of the white and the blue, and I'm working on getting some of the reflections now as I see them in the water. They're less vibrant than they were at the beginning of the day. And so I'm creating them just more subtle, and it gives the feeling of some ripples in the water. And I'm also thinking of the negative shape of the trees as they're reflected into the water. So I'm painting around some passages, putting these higher key shines on the surface. There were also darker shadows from the trees that were cast along the bank, and I loved how they sort of spread across the surface of the water. It gave a wonderful illusion of flatness on the water top, so I definitely wanted to put those in. They were not there when I first got there, but I did really like them, and so further back, those lines got closer and closer together to create that illusion of distance. And these shadows of these trees up front, as they got closer to me, they got broader, and I could see a bigger, more substantial shadow from these trees. So as a finishing touch, I came back through and just picked out a few more highlights and a couple of more accents that I felt the painting needed. Some of the water surface that was closest to me. So you'll see here soon how I just take a bigger brush and just sort of soften those brush strokes. Now I'm almost done with this, so I wanted to thank you all so much for joining me. And be sure to check out the links below. There's lots of opportunity coming up for you to study with me personally, from my Epiphany Fine Art page to the workshop at Les Vieux Couvent 2024. I will be going back to southern France to teach again. So if you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it, I hope you give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And you guys enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy this video. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, guys. All right, everybody. Well, that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. And be sure to check out the links below. Hope that you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.